Welcome to Garden Gossip, Big Blend Radio's home and garden show. Come on, let's grow together. So welcome, everyone. You know, we love to do our gardening. We love to check out what our neighbors are doing, since this is Garden Gossip here on Big Blend Radio. But also, what can we grow inside? What can we grow outside in regards to mushrooms? And we're very happy to have Matt McInnis join us. He's a co-founder and co-creator of, well, he's going to be not the co-creator, but he's the creative director. He's the creator of mushrooms, anyway, of North Spore. It's an amazing company based out of Maine. And we tried one of their mushroom kits where you can grow lion's mane. And my gosh, we just grew it in the kitchen. Super easy. And I'm going to tell you, all ages need to do this. I was like a kid, and all I thought was if I had one of these when I was a kid, I would have like a mushroom forest growing in the house. So welcome, Matt. How are you?
Doing well. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Do people like grow mushroom forests, like literally like start going? Because there's a little kit that we did with lion's mane, which that was super fascinating because I've been reading how good that is for our body and how many people are using it, even in their coffee and stuff. But it seems like people go a little bit like, wow, this is so easy to do that I want to do more and different kinds of mushrooms.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you used was one of North Spore's spray and grow kits. So they're kind of like a very introductory uh, form for growing mushrooms. So they're kind of like a box kit you can put on your kitchen counter. You slice an X in the kit and then it grows mushrooms. It grows edible mushrooms. So we kind of see that as like the perfect introduction to growing your own mushrooms. I think
Mm.
growing your own mushrooms is sort of a novel concept for most people. So like we made this product to um, just really take any guesswork out of it and just make it super easy with the hope that people have a good experience with it. And then we'll move on to growing mushrooms in their gardens, maybe growing more mushrooms so that they have this kind of like consistent source of healthy homegrown mushrooms.
And also to get those kinds of varieties. I know like lion's mane, I was in the grocery store yesterday and I did not see lion's mane anywhere where I could get it. So that's, I think, for people that may be in an area where you may not have a specialty store, you may not find it that easily.
Yeah, absolutely. A funny kind of fact about the mushrooms that you find in grocery stores. So, people often will go into their grocery store and they'll see button mushrooms. They might see white button mushrooms, creminis, portobello mushrooms. But the fact is that all of those are actually the exact same species.
Oh,
They're just at different stages of growth. So what feels like this great diversity of mushrooms is actually a single species. So it's kind of like if you walked into the grocery store, carrots, there's big carrots, but like all of the world of vegetables and plants was reduced to a singular species. That is kind of what has happened with mushrooms. Like there is so much variation in flavor and texture in the mushroom world, and for whatever reason, we kind of have such a limited set in our grocery stores. So yeah, you're
mhm.
absolutely correct. Growing them at home is sort of a way to get that variety.
So it's like doing our heirloom veggies that, it's the same thing as what we've done with turkeys. It's like here, we're down to one species. We lost our heritage species. Now, some people are doing them, farmers and things like that. But we've done that out of this ease of how we feed the population, I think, is get away from these really cool things that are really super healthy for you. We travel full time across the country. We document parks and public lands, and there's a lot of mushrooms in them, which it's true. And I'm always like, people are like, oh, you should harvest. I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know. And I might take the wrong one and get really happy. I don't know. But so I'm glad you're here to talk about that a little bit. The other thing is, when we got the kit, we were at a friend's place in Oregon, and she's a super gardener, super chef and everything. And we were growing the lion's mane, which basically becomes an entity of its own, right? It's just, we started like, okay, we got to name this thing. Every day, like I kept running in there. It's like, it has already grown. Once it starts growing, this thing just like, it's like a sourdough bread. Just, I'm coming out. I'm busting through. Well, she harvested it. And she said one of her big joys was actually cutting it up because she stir-fried it up with some peppers from her garden and onions from her garden. But she said each Like when she cut it up, she says, Lisa, these are all like bunches of little mushrooms in there. Like, so what's going on with the lion's mane? Because it almost looked like cauliflower. And then I'm like, but she said her part was just, it was fascinating to look at it when she cut it up.
Yeah, I mean, lion's mane, if you're growing it at home, it kind of it forms this sort of white mycelial mass and then forms this big kind of yeah, cauliflower. It has
Yeah.
little teeth on it. It's a very interesting looking mushroom. You can kind of pull it apart. It has a texture almost similar to crab meat. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's just that was probably a single mushroom. We call them mushroom fruiting bodies or mushrooms. That each one of those little spines is kind of how, that is what releases spores. It's the reproductive structure of the
Hmm.
lion's mane mushroom. So yeah, they're fascinating mushrooms. They're being studied for their use in kind of brain health. It's for cognitive function. They're being looked at for treatment for Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. So it's a very like fascinating kind of food and medicine combined into a single mushroom.
How did you get into the world of mushrooms, and why North Spore? How did this? And everyone go to northspore.com. You can see these kits on there, and there's all kinds of other cool stuff, which we'll talk about. And we're going to talk about gardening, and growing mushrooms in your garden, because apparently this is the time, everyone. So, yeah, how did you get started in mushrooms?
Yeah, so I started even when I was a teenager, I was kind of interested in mushrooms. So I'd often have a little field guide, I'd be out in the woods and
Yeah.
just trying to figure out what I was seeing. I ended up going when I was in my later teens and early 20s, I worked at a kind of a nicer farm to table restaurant in the right outside of Acadia National Park and Mount Desert Island in Maine, where we're
Mm.
based in Maine. I actually learned how to forage for edible mushrooms, kind of learned from an older chef who foraged for wild mushrooms himself. And then kind of started to learn some of the local species that were edible and becoming comfortable with foraging and harvesting them.
Mm.
So really it kind of started as like an interest in foraging wild mushrooms. Uh, that time, I had already met who would become my co-founders of North Spore. So John and Elia, we all went to College of the Atlantic, it's a tiny little school in Bar Harbor, Maine. And John and Elia were both kind of interested in biology. John actually went on after College of the Atlantic to get a graduate degree in mycology,
Wow.
which is the study of mushrooms.
Mm.
And he got some of that knowledge of the laboratory process that underpins sort of what we do at Northport. We actually have a kind of a fancy laboratory inside of our warehouse where we are working with these mushroom cultures and producing the kits, the mushroom spawn for gardeners, and all of the kind of scientific underpinning that we have to do to create the products that we do. So that was sort of like we came together. A number of years after graduating, and the common denominator amongst all of us was a love for mushrooms and a
Mm.
desire to start a mushroom farm. So Northport actually started by growing edible mushrooms and distributing them to restaurants and grocery stores. So like
Okay.
bringing that variety to the
Hmm.
places that we like to eat and shop. And um, over time, we learned that there was actually all these other mushroom farms around the country and people who were really interested in growing their own mushrooms who didn't have as easy access to the tools and supplies. So we started to sell those on the side and eventually made a website and then kind of pivoted more into the e-commerce. And, at the start of the pandemic, we were about 50% fresh mushrooms, 50% growing supplies online. And we just went whoop, right over to
That's amazing, though. I mean, it's robust what you guys do. I mean, it's you see you everywhere now. It's like, oh, Northport, Northport. So you guys are working it for sure. But I find it exciting because everyone I've talked to about, I'm like, dude, we did this mushroom kit, and everyone's like, I've always wanted to grow mushrooms. I've not one person I've talked to about this that has not gone. I've always wanted to grow my own mushrooms, and I think there's kind of like a little fear at the point, and I think it comes from not understanding the edibles, and then if you're foraging, not understanding which ones, right? And they're so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I would do a sit up in the Appalachian area in Pisgah National Forest, and I go out with this dog, Lucy. I got to give shout out to Lucy, my favorite dog. She's one of my many favorite dogs. I gotta say that. I got Jessie. Anyway, it's a long list of dogs, but Lucy and I go out hiking in the forest and the mushrooms, and it blows my mind because how they change in colors, in shapes even. Some of it just looks like drool, and the next thing you know, things pop out, and then it looks like a punk with all these spores flying off its head. And so I got all into this, and she's not into it as much. She's like going after woodchucks and things, but I'm like, no, dude, look at this mushroom. So I don't care. But the I mean, the mushroom, apparently they're really big on morels. And so people go there every spring into this one area and harvest, but I don't know which one. So, getting into a kit kind of gets you even understanding how to forage even from a kit and then cooking something different, right? So that's the other thing is learning different species of mushrooms beyond the buttons, the criminies, even though they're all friends. So have you seen that from people in a reaction of like, I didn't know I
Yeah.
could cook lion's mane. I didn't know, these are
I feel like
new in a way.
there's a few points there. Like I feel like there's sort of like this foraging and fear of foraging mushrooms. There's sort of like the varieties and how to cook them, and then like the challenge of
Yeah.
cooking them yourself. Let's start with like the foraging is interesting because I think people often will have this fear of foraging and fear of these poisonous mushrooms out in the world. But I mean, the same could be said of berries, right? Like
Oh,
most
yeah.
people feel comfortable identifying a strawberry or a blueberry or a raspberry. And the same is kind of true, and there are plenty of poisonous berries out in the woods. Um, and the same is true for mushrooms. Like when I go into into nature, into the woods, and am looking for mushrooms, I'm seeing tons of stuff that I don't know what it is. Like I might know
Mm.
the family, I might have like an inkling of what it is, but I do know very well a handful of edible species that don't have other lookalikes.
Okay.
And that's what I'm comfortable. And it's actually, I think, a little bit more accessible than people give it credit for being. So I would encourage people to, there's often like mushroom forays or, an educator who will take people mushroom hunting. And it's a really fun pastime. And it's something that I think is doesn't need to be as feared as I think it is.
Yeah.
As far as mushroom varieties and growing them, I mean, one of the things that we're big advocates for is starting with species of mushrooms that are just incredibly easy to grow and incredibly easy to cook. Like, I
Okay.
think both of those things together, there are a number of species that are almost interchangeable, the creminis that you find in the grocery store. Uh, I'm a huge advocate of starting by growing oyster mushrooms. I think oyster
Okay.
mushrooms they're really fast growing. They're very, very easy to cultivate. We have the kits on your countertop with a number of different oyster mushroom species. Um, and they're very easy to cook. You can chop them up, saute them in some sort of fat, olive oil, butter, add some spices, some garlic, some salt, and
Mm.
like you have something that's delicious and can be added to all kinds of different meals.
Mm.
I think where people are go astray is when they're familiar with morels. Morels are a wonderful mushroom to go forage for. They are very difficult to cultivate. Um, we sell morel spawn, people cultivate them, but they're not a great beginner species. If you're gonna
Okay.
start with something, start with a species that is just really easy and fail safe, and have a great experience with it. Have an abundance of mushrooms, and then, you know, you can advance your skills from that point.
It's so funny because even just using the word species, obviously there's plant species, but this is a fungus, which is a little different, right? Isn't this kind of part? It's like its own entity, its own genus, right? Compared to like, it's not necessarily a plant, it's not necessarily an animal, but it's kind of both put together, but not. It's wild with
It's its own
mushrooms.
biological kingdom, actually. So there's
Yeah, yeah,
plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, and there's another couple as well. But um, yeah, and then within that there are, families, orders, genus, species, like all of
yeah,
these things that differentiate. So like really like the takeaway is that think of all of plants, like that from palm trees to carrots to seaweed, like they're all within the plant kingdom, and fungi is its own kingdom. So there is a vast diversity of
Mm,
fungi. There are fungi that produce mushrooms. There are fungi that don't.
mm,
Brewer's yeast is a fungi.
mm.
Certain molds, like all of this is
They say that growing mushrooms, like with what everything we're doing, in regards to climate change, right? That the mushrooms have been here like even before trees. Like they're the most ancient beings for our underground network, and really clean the air, clean the soil, and do so much for the soil that the more mushrooms we have out there, the better for our ecosystem. Like they're that ancient. They are like ancient beings, that are
yeah.
still here.
I mean, yeah, fungi have been around for millions and millions of years.
But
I don't know exactly how, but a very, very long,
they're
very
ancient.
ancient.
They're ancient and they're wise. So growing them in your garden, so that's where I'm leading to with this is another thing. So you can grow them in your house. So that's cool during winter time, right? So you can still grow them in the house. And it's super easy. You're just spraying water on them twice a day. It's so easy. And then there's all these other things that you guys do. But in the garden, you were saying that this time of year is a good time. So tell us about that kind of, because I know some people can take the kit and go, okay, well, let's put it out in the garden and let it play with the other plants. But tell us about that whole
Yeah.
process.
So there are a few different ways that you can grow mushrooms in the garden, and there's two primary seasons for it. So there's the spring season, like you can do mushroom, we call it mushroom inoculation. You're inoculating different material to grow mushrooms. You can do that in the spring, kind of along with all the other things that you're doing in your garden in the spring. But the fall is also a really wonderful time to start your mushroom growing projects. They'll usually produce mushrooms the following year, but it's a great time to do
Mhm.
that. And there are a few different methods for it. The easiest method is actually to use a plant and grow kit. So these are kits that Spore makes. They are similar to the kits that you grow on your kitchen counter, but they kind of are um, sawdust that has mushroom material in it. You remove it from the bag and you actually bury it in your garden beds, and then your garden beds will sprout the mushrooms that you buried. So you can it's a fun way to do like a diversity of species. You get
Okay.
like one of each of a number of different species, bury them in your garden, and then harvest those mushrooms. And you're very likely to get harvests this fall if you do that process.
Do it now. Do it now, quick.
Yeah. Those are the plant and grow. Uh, you can also create mushroom beds. So this is taking a material like wood chips, hardwood wood chips, or straw, and then putting it into like a raised garden bed. If your paths are lined with wood chips, you can actually just grow mushrooms directly from your garden paths. But you'll take that material and you'll add mushroom spawn to it. And mushroom spawn is kind of like the seed equivalent for growing mushrooms. So it
Okay.
looks like a bag of sawdust that has it looks like it has mold on it, but it's actually just the mushroom mycelium of the species that you're trying to cultivate. And
Okay.
you'll take
So
that, you'll
that's what
break it
the
out.
kit looks like that too with the little
Mhm.
thingies.
Yep, there's some subtle differences between what makes a kit and what makes spawn. Um,
Okay.
but they're both, yeah, they both look very similar. But the spawn you actually break up and then you'd sprinkle it into your straw or into your wood chips, mix it in, water it in, and then that mycelium jumps off of the spawn into the wood chips and into the straw, and then will ultimately grow mushrooms. That would probably
Wow.
happen like the following spring.
Wow.
A great species to start with there would be a mushroom called the wine cap. Um, it's like this very prolific, very tasty, meaty mushroom that's easy to identify. Um, and it will come back year after year. It usually will establish itself within your garden paths or
Oh,
your
cool.
beds. And you mentioned like how good mushrooms are for the ecosystem. And the same is very true for your garden. So mushrooms are decomposers. So they will decompose organic matter and then make it more bioavailable for your plants. So
Mm,
by having this kind of the mushrooms in the ecosystem of the garden, you're going to be making your plants really happy and healthy.
mm.
Um, so it's kind of a
Wow.
cool like way of just like finishing
Helping
that
your
cycle.
garden.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's better than chemicals, man.
Yeah.
I was looking at like how mushrooms could help like chemicalized pieces of land, like quarries in that reclamation part of getting the land back to its healthy place. And I was wondering if mushrooms could be part of that process. I think they can because they do the decomposing. They are like the cleaners, you know?
Yeah,
It's
they can be used in a couple of different ways. They can be used to break down materials that may be toxic. Like there is like some study of
hmm
mycoremediation. Like you
okay.
take fungi to break down oil in an oil. They can also be used to bioaccumulate metals from the
hmm
soil. So you can like if you had a heavy metal contamination, you could grow the mushrooms, harvest those mushrooms, which bioaccumulate that material, and then dispose of them. That's a way of getting the heavy metals out of your
It's just like how important the coral is in our oceans, and they look alike. Like, I think they're friends, coral and mushrooms, you know? They may not meet, but I think they're friends. I do 'cause well, they're so beautiful and everything, and that to me is like the whole thing in your garden is just to see, when you see mushrooms on trees and things like that, and those big pancake ones they're just so cool, and some of them hold water for birds and
yeah,
butterflies and
yeah.
things, so there's all these benefits that are exciting and to do in your garden. That's cool. One thing I wanted to know is like for me when we were doing this, it was like, remember when you're kids, you got those sea anemone things that would not see, what are they? Those little
Sea monkeys?
sea monkeys. That's
Yeah.
okay. So I went right into that mode with the mushroom kit. And then it was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool because now you're naming it, you're talking to it. Even if you're going to eat it, you do start to get a little weird that way. But for kids doing this as a project to understand growing something and even caring for something without having like you're not going to kill a dog, you know what I mean? It's this do this before a puppy, what have you had any feedback on that for families and for kids to get involved?
Yeah, I think they're great for kids. I think they work on a timeline of patience that works for children too. Like when you get one of these kits, it only takes a couple of weeks for them to start growing mushrooms.
Yeah.
When they start growing, they grow really quickly. So it's only a number of days before they are baby mushrooms to fully harvestable, and then they'll come back multiple times as well. So it kind of works as a project within the scope of patience of a child. So yeah, they're great. They're wonderful educational tools for learning about biology, learning about the importance of growing your own food, healthy food. Um, then you get to cook those mushrooms. I think that the whole process of yeah, like kind of a connection to food, create kind of
Yeah.
helping a child establish that relationship. It's yeah, very profound for that. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and we have tons of families who reach out to us. Actually have a board on the way into our production facility, and we have some like handwritten notes from children being like, "Thank you for."
No way, that's so cool. Cause it's hard to get kids to eat mushrooms too. They're like, "What is that?" Because to me, they're beautiful, and then I'm like, "I don't know if I wanna eat it." It's like, I just belong to all these mushroom groups because I have no clue on Facebook, all these mushroom groups, especially when we're out on the Appalachian area, and I'm like people are like, "Just go and harvest it." Got it. No, 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 but so now I know you can because they just grow right back, and that's the interesting thing too. So once you harvest, like when we harvest the lion's mane, it will come back, right? You just keep spraying water on it?
Yeah, yeah, they'll keep coming back. So what you're seeing in the woods, is the reproductive structure. It's like the apple on the
Okay.
apple tree. So the
Okay.
apple tree is, with for mushrooms, it's the mycelium. So it's this thread-like,
Mhm.
root-like structure that's in the ground or in the wood of a tree. And then when the fungus wants to reproduce, it produces the mushroom that we all see and recognize. But it's
Okay.
an ephemeral thing. You can harvest it and that organism is still completely happy and alive inside of its,
So sustainable. This is nice. Like
yeah,
this is it's a kind form of eating.
yeah, yeah,
You
and it's
know?
it's it's fun. Like there's actually the one other method for growing outdoors that I didn't mention is you can actually take logs, so
That's
sections
cool.
of log, and inoculate. You put the mushroom spawn into the log using a special tool, and then those logs colonize with the mushroom mycelium, and then will sprout edible mushrooms for years. So you do this
Wow.
process once, and then you can have up to a decade of mushrooms growing from your logs. So kind of a cool, like very sustainable way to use, like if a storm comes through and knocks down a tree or takes off a bough, You can turn that into food for the next 10 years if you're alive.
This is cool. Now, what about like when it gets into winter and depending on where you live, it could get really dry. Or if you live in the desert, the humidity may it goes away. So because it's like keep it in a cool, moist place, right? This is what we want is some natural light. You said filtered light that's when we got the kit. So we put it in a place where it was getting a little bit of filtered sun. It was temperate because it was in the kitchen. So you had that moisture. And it was with the African violets, which it made friends with because that's what cracked me up. At our friend's house, Linda, we were doing this, and she's like, "You've got to spray the African violets in the morning and the evening." And I'm like, "Well, you two are buddies because that's exactly what we did." And I mean, who can't do that, right? And so in the winter, though, I was wondering, like, do we have to do extra humidity for that? Or, if you have a greenhouse, can you go put it in the greenhouse? Like I would have, like, if I was not traveling full time, I think I would have a mushroom greenhouse. Like, it'd be
Yes,
bad.
certainly. Yeah, we actually, so like, for the little kits, usually just putting it by the kitchen sink, someplace with a little bit of ambient humidity helps. If your home is really dry, if you have like a roaring wood stove or, live in the desert, you can actually fashion kind of like a humidity tent. You have to put holes in it. Mushrooms breathe just like humans do. So you have to make sure that
Oh,
there's
okay.
exchange, but you can spritz the inside of it with some water and then you have like this nice little growing chamber. Like Northspore also produces growing systems. Actually, behind me, I have a tent system that we produce for growing much more mushrooms than you would get from a single kit. But we have a bin system that has a little humidifier. You can use one of those. You can use one of these tent systems that we call the boom room. And we have a product in development right now that's launching towards the end of this year that's for gardeners. So
Hmm.
if you were in a more arid climate, it's a raised bed that you put into your garden and it has a tent structure that fits over it and humidifies. So it hooks up to a hose and it runs on a timer and it keeps everything nice and humid and provides the shade that the mushrooms need. So you can put it right alongside your other garden beds. Um,
This is cool. I want a garden. I want to do this. Now, are the chefs growing their own now? I know that you were supplying chefs and restaurants with this, but are any of them growing them and harvesting them themselves?
yeah, I mean,
Because there's
I
kitchen gardens. I mean, to me, this is part of a kitchen garden. Isn't mushrooms one of the most important out of the three ingredients we all want to take to the desert island? Mushrooms, garlic, and wine. Thank you.
yeah. I mean, the cool thing about mushrooms is that they're loaded with protein. So they're one of the easier ways for people at home to produce their own protein source. So you can have chickens, you can, lay eggs, you can, you know, do things that way. Or you can, have your own sheep or cows or pigs. But growing mushrooms is a way more accessible, easy way to have
Mm,
kind of protein rich material available.
mm.
So yeah, just really, really kind of a cool, type of food to be experimenting
Yeah.
with on your own.
Yeah, I think that even with winter coming, which I know we're just at the beginning of fall, but with winter coming, people get like antsy to get back out in the garden and grow something. So to me, this is a way to do it. But I think for restaurants, it would be, those who grow their own garlic and onions and herbs and basil and whatever, that they should be growing these too. Have your own mushrooms at your restaurant that you can harvest.
Yeah,
It,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
And then
this is,
yeah, we know of a number of chefs who kind of have that in their kitchen gardens as well. That's definitely, especially like the logs and the beds. That's a
mm.
very common thing.
That's cool. Well, very exciting. You guys keep developing more spawn for the rest of the world here. I love this. So, and you ship everywhere across the country? Is it year round? It doesn't matter for
Yeah.
the little babies?
Yeah,
Okay.
year round. I'd also recommend that Northspore has a YouTube channel where we actually have
Yeah.
a lot of energy into making educational videos about cultivating mushrooms. So we have one all about gardening with mushrooms, different species. But I would highly recommend checking that out to like get
Yeah.
you can see what the process looks like and determine whether it's something you'd want to do. Yeah, but northspore.com is our e-commerce site. And yeah, I would definitely recommend people go and, read. We have a ton of articles about all this stuff and we can, help you.
Yeah.
We have a great customer service team that's really wonderful, and we'll make sure that you're successful.
That's cool. We'll put the link in the YouTube for YouTube in the episode notes for everyone and for northspore.com so everyone you can access it easily. But I'm just saying holiday season coming up. What a cool thing to do. And you're looking at holiday meals, start growing your own mushrooms. So it's a conversation starter and everyone can get past politics and just look at mushrooms growing. That's the best thing. Open a bottle of wine, have some mushrooms and be happy. Thanks so much, Matt. It's been a pleasure having you on the show and it has been super fun playing with the lion's mane. And and the lion's mane was Simba. That's the name. So anyway.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you for joining us here on Big Blend Radio's Garden Gossip Show. Thanks for growing with us. You can follow us at bigblendradio.com.